Here is our battle plan. We will hear first from both generals who will fill in the background of their lives and their part in the earlier part of the war. And at that point, we will ask them questions, or at least I will, and then I will throw it open to the floor. The only question in my mind is, which general should I ask to go first? I must hide my own sympathies in the role of the impartial moderator, and I thought the best way to do that would be to flip a coin. So, if you don't mind my using a United States coin, we'll ask you, with General Grant's permission, to make the call.
That's because it was United States coins.
Is tails. That's a call on General Grant. General?
Thank you. I want to welcome everyone this evening, and I'm going to briefly keep my words down. General Lee has a lot that he would like to say this evening, but we also have restricted our conversation so that we may debate later. When President Lincoln, after the fire upon Fort Sumter, when President Lincoln issued his call for 75,000 volunteers, I was working in my father's leather goods store. And I was sitting on a barrel, and I saw the volunteers trying to organize themselves, and I decided that I should go ahead and help organize them because they didn't know how to drill or to march, and I escorted them. I tried to get an appointment from Governor Yates of Illinois, and I finally received it of the volunteers. Briefly going through the battles up till the time when I'm brought to Washington City, I had my first battle was the Battle of Belmont. The Battle of Belmont, I was almost captured. In fact, bullets were flying everywhere around me. Now, Battle of Belmont was poorly planned and poorly executed, but I was still learning my trade also. The next major battle would be Fort Henry and Fort Donelson. Now, Fort Donelson had been bombarded by Admiral Foote, and they were ready to go. In fact, at Fort Henry, they did go. They ran to the next fort, which was Fort Donelson. Well, I immediately went to Fort Donelson, and Simon Buckner came in, and he wanted to know the terms of armistice. And he said, he wanted to know, and I said, well, no terms, unconditional surrender. So my initials was U.S., so that's where I got one nickname. Now, for you of Southern sympathies, I will have you know, I do have several nicknames, and I will have you know my parents were married. Well, I was the hero of the time because it was the first major win of the Union. We had captured 14,000 Confederates, and it was the first major win. Well, I'm standing on the banks with Admiral Foote near a tent, and a newspaper reporter sees me with a cigar that Admiral Foote had given me. And with that, when Admiral Foote gave it to me, the newspaper reported, the people of the North, because of this tremendous victory, sent me 10,000 cigars. So I guess you could say that they just loved me to death. Now, I'm the hero of the time, and you know, a hero's crown will tarnish very quickly, and that happened in April at Shiloh. It's kind of ironic that Shiloh is a Hebrew word which means a place of peace, and on a Sunday that we have one of our bloodiest battles. That's when Mrs. Lincoln decides that my nickname should be Butcher because we have high casualties. The first day, I wasn't at Shiloh or Pittsburgh Landing. I was at Savannah, which was our headquarters. On Sunday morning, I get up and I'm hobbling around because my horse had fallen on my leg. Luckily, the ground was soft and I didn't have permanent damage. But when I heard it, I went to Shiloh. Actually, I got on the steamboat Empress. Took us 2 hours to get there, and when I arrived there, I saw everything in disarray. In fact, there was one man that was running in the opposite direction, and the sergeant yells at him, says, "Why are you running?" And he replied, "Because I can't fly." Well, I started getting supplies and saw the situation. There were people cowering up underneath the bluffs of the river, and those people reported that I was drunk. Some of them were very influential families, and to hide their cowardice, they started doing that. So I was drunk, according to them, again. Well, that was the first day, and we had more or less lost had it not been for Johnson getting shot in the leg and bleeding to death up here, leading his men to the charge. That night, I'm trying to go into the meeting house, and it's been made into a makeshift hospital. The people are moaning and groaning, and the stench of dead flesh everywhere, and the arms, and people yelling with the arms being thrown out the window. I couldn't stay there. So I go and stand underneath an oak tree, and that's when Sherman comes up to me and says, "We had the devil's pay today." So with that, I said, "Yep, but tomorrow we'll get it." And the next day we did. And with that battle, we had, second day, there was a peach field. Bodies were everywhere on that. The Confederate soldiers continued charging. And you probably could walk across that entire field and not touch ground because of all the bodies. We had high casualties, and so did the South. Well, those are the major battles that you probably are aware of. The battle caused me, or disturbed me quite a bit. In fact, General Howley came in and relieved me of command and just put me as a figurehead. And I was ready to quit. Maybe General Lee would have wished I had. But Sherman talked me out of it because I was ready to resign and go back home. Well, after Chattanooga, and I was ordered to Washington. I'm jumping very quickly because I do not wish to take all of General Lee's time. I was ordered to Washington to take control of the Army of the Potomac. I arrived in Washington with my son, and we went to the Willard Hotel. And when we went to the Willard Hotel, nobody knew who I was. But I was ordered to go to the White House. Well, I followed my orders. Again, I was not dressed appropriately. I had some dust on my clothes, I will admit. And when I arrived there, they were having a party at the White House. When I arrived there, everybody heard that I was there, and they wanted to see me. And I'm cornered. And as I'm stepping back, people say, "Stand up so we can see you." I was standing. They wanted me to stand up, so they encouraged me to step up on the furniture. Now, I stepped upon Mrs. Lincoln's crimson couch, or sofa, and her face turned as red as the couch, so she was upset. So in March of 1864, I took command of the Army of the Potomac. And I will stop there so that General Lee can tell everyone where he was at up to 1864.
Thank you, General. I really appreciate each of you being here this evening. Before I go any further, I'd like to point out something that I